In this lesson, we'll wrap up this course by learning how to use the Liquify filter here inside of Photoshop. Okay, great. So this is the Lesson 39 Begin file. So this is the file that I'm going to be demonstrating this particular filter with. So the Liquify filter is probably one of the funnest and really ultimately most liberating filters you can use here inside of Photoshop, because you can completely change the structure of an image with it. So let me go ahead and show you how to get to that. Now, again, with the Liquify filter, we can come in here and we can apply it as a destructive filter directly to this layer, or we can simply right-click and convert that to a smart object and apply it as a smart filter. So we'll come up here and choose Filter and Liquify, and it's right there. So your version of Liquify probably looks like this. So this is kind of the slim down, simplified version of this filter. But there's still a lot going on here, and we're going to kind of take a look at that. So basically, this filter is going to, just as it says, allow you to liquefy the pixels. So imagine if this were a painting on canvas that was still wet, and you were to drag your fingers through it or rake your hand through it and really kind of distort this image. That's basically what Liquify is going to allow you to do with any photograph that you load into this filter. So we have some zooming options down here, but the same keyboard shortcuts are going to work for zooming inside of Liquify as outside of the filter. So Control Spacebar to zoom in, Control Alt Spacebar to zoom out, or we can use Control plus and minus, either way. So the first tool that I want to show you is kind of it's called the push left tool, and I don't really understand why it's called that, other than the fact that if we take this tool and maybe push left here, I'm just going to simply kind of run it across his face. You'll see here that it sort of pushes that information down. Now if I run that to the right, you'll see here it's kind of pulling it right back up. So it's just kind of a way to distort based on kind of the direction you're moving. Now if we were to go up and down, you'll see that it still kind of goes left. So, or if we go down, it's going to go right. So it's kind of just creating almost a ripple or a wave through the image. So let me undo that. I'm actually going to step back one more time to this point in the image. So now really one of my favorite tools is right up here. It's called the forward warp tool. So if we grab this, we can again hold Alt and right click and drag to increase the size of this. We also have some brush options over here. You can see we have brush size and brush pressure, and we can also utilize our stylus for pressure purposes here. So let's say we wanted to kind of thin up his head, maybe on the sides up here. So I'm going to just grab a nice big brush and just going to kind of come in and begin to kind of push his head in. Now I am pushing the image out from the boundaries, so you're starting to see a little bit of that transparency grid, but that's okay. We can fix that. That's not a big deal. We'll just simply come in here with a little bit smaller brush and begin to smudge that back. It's a fairly neutral background, so I think we can get away with that. All right, fantastic. So now there's a few other tools here. If we look, we've got a pucker and a bloat tool. Now the bloat tool is going to be right here. Pucker tool is going to be right here. So if we wanted to come in and maybe bloat his eyes out just a bit, we could come in here and begin to kind of just press and use the pressure sensitivity of our tablet to kind of give him sort of a bug-eyed look. And then we could come in and use the pucker tool rather. Maybe we want to come in here and kind of make his mouth really small. We can come in and again we could come in and bloat his nose a bit to kind of match his eyes. And we could come in and really, I mean, ultimately up to you at this point. You could come in and take and begin to kind of smudge his cheeks up and maybe his chin. So you can see this particular filter in its current state has a lot of a lot of leeway, a lot of freedom that allows you. And when you're done with this, all you need to do is come over here and hit OK. And you can see here, if we come in and hide that filter, we've made some pretty dramatic changes to this image. Like I said, this is a filter that's a lot of fun to use. But, you know, we've used it without any kind of masking coming into play here. So let's actually go ahead and hide the face one layer. And we encountered a few problems, if you remember. We started to kind of smudge the edges away and reveal the transparency grid, and if that was a more complex background, our little fix that we did a moment ago probably wouldn't work. So let's come over here, jump into quick mask mode, And that way we can grab our brush. And I'm just going to use a hard brush for this. And maybe we want to prevent this tool from coming in here and manipulating his suit. And we'll just kind of bring it up and around so we can no longer kind of liquefy the edges where we were starting to reveal that transparency grid. And we'll just kind of brush in a really rough selection here. Maybe we want to come in and tighten this up just a little bit around his face. So that way we can, basically we're planning for some liquefying of his face, but we don't want to affect his suit here. Now again, we can come in and grab our eraser if we need to erase some of this back. But again, basically what we're doing at this point is we're making a selection just by painting in some areas here. So that's okay with me. I'm going to go ahead and zoom back out here, and we're going to exit back out of quick mask mode. So basically all we did was make a selection here. Really, you can load up any selection as long as there's a selection made when you load up the Liquify filter. Basically, the areas that are not selected will be masked out. And I want to show that to you. So let's come up to Filter, grab our Liquify again. I won't worry about creating a smart object this time. But now look what happened. Basically, we've got this red area where we've got parts of the image that are masked out. Now, if I were to grab my my forward warp tool and begin to push, you can see that we can't go through that mask. So let me undo that here, and I want to show you how we can begin to add to and subtract from this mask here. So once you're inside of Liquify, this is really not referred to as a mask, even though that's kind of what it is. It's referred to as freezing and thawing parts of the image. And you can't see that right now, but if you come over here and enable advanced mode, you're going to see a plethora of different options that open up over here. Really, most of this stuff is not day one with Photoshop type material, so we're not going to get too deep into those options. But what I do want to show you is over here we have our freeze tool and we have our thaw tool. So in the case of him, let's say maybe we want to freeze maybe a part of his chin. We can come in here and just continue to paint. And now basically those areas that we're painting, it's essentially just adding to the mask that we created. Or we can come over here and begin to thaw. And you can see here we can come in and just kind of maybe erase along that. So that selection that essentially became a mask or a frozen area here inside of the Liquify filter is something that we can manipulate on the fly. So again, we can be very strategic about the areas that we're manipulating with our Liquify filter. So again, if we wanted to come in here and just kind of run this down, kind of stretch his face a little bit, something like that. You can see here that we stretched it quite a bit, but because that mask is right there, it's running into that. So might want to be a little bit more careful. Maybe we come in and thaw out some of this area right in here. So when we come in and run this through one more time, we're not getting quite so much distortion around those areas. So again, we can come in and thaw if we need to. But there is a masking component to the Liquify filter, and that's what I wanted to begin to show you here. So again, this is a really fun filter to play with, but you know, what we've demonstrated this with here in this lesson isn't a very practical use of the filter. We're not using it on a project, which is difficult to do in one lesson. So if you're interested in learning about some more practical uses for the Liquify filter, a couple courses you might think about checking out are the facial retouching and manipulation course in our Photoshop category, or our professional series, Designing a Female Android in Photoshop. In both of those courses, the Liquify filter was utilized, and you can jump in there and kind of see how that was utilized in an actual project. So as fun as this filter is to play with, this is going to bring us to the end of this course. Hopefully you have enjoyed this course dedicated to getting you up to speed with what you need to know inside of Photoshop on your first day with the application. I know I've enjoyed the process of walking through all this information with you. Thanks for joining me.